In this third video of the Melody series, we will look at the idea of key in music. There are 7 letters in the musical alphabet, those being the letters A through G. However, those 7 letters cannot just signify all of the sounds that we hear without adding in these symbols here known as accidentals. Each of these symbols changes the notes slightly, giving us more options when creating a melody. The first symbol looks like a pound sign or a number sign and is known as a sharp. A sharp, when placed next to a note, will raise the pitch of that note by something known as a half step. Here is an example of a C followed by a C sharp. The next symbol would be in the shape of a lowercase b and is known as a flat. A flat is the opposite of a sharp in that it now lowers the pitch by 1 half step. Once again, we will hear a C followed by a C flat, or in this case, a B natural. Now, I should mention that a half step is the smallest interval that we hear in Western music. The last symbol, for the natural, almost looks as though the sharp symbol and the flat symbol have merged together. That is because the natural sign cancels the previous sharp or the previous flat, letting us know that we return back to the original pitch. Now, the reason that these are called accidentals is that they are typically just temporarily inputted into music to change the sound of a note. Here at the bottom of the screen, we see an explanation on how this idea of accidentals works with regards to music. For note number 1, notice that it is an F sharp because of the key signature. What they are talking about is the fact that this sharp here is at the beginning of a song before the notes are even written in, and because of that, any note that is on that top line will be an F sharp. To counteract that, as in the case of number 2, notice that they had to write in a natural sign to specify that that note now should be played as a natural. In the case of number 3, this would still be a natural simply due to the fact that the natural sign came before it. Since we read left to right, whatever was the most recent change still applies. The exception to that rule is when we cross over the bar line. Once we cross over the bar line, we revert back to the key signature. That is why number 4 is an F sharp. The natural sign from before no longer applies. In that same logic, number 5 here is a C, but considering there is no C in the key signature, this is a C natural. To make it a C sharp, as they do in number 6, we have to put in the sharp sign. Going back to this idea of the key signature, with the addition of sharps and flats, there are now 12 distinct notes that we can hear, which explains why, when we take a look at the various key signature possibilities, we now have 12 types total. This right here is a picture of something known as the circle of fifths, and at first glance, this may look incredibly confusing. What we see on the outer edge in purple here is the name of the major key. In this example, the key of G major would have 1 sharp in its key signature, in this case the F sharp. Below, in the blue, is something known as the minor key. Using the same signature of just an F sharp, if I started now on the note E instead of G, it would sound a little sadder and darker. And in the innermost circle, we see the actual key signature itself. When looking at a piano, a major scale, as you can see, is usually 8 notes long, and when we hear it, it sounds very, very happy. This is the most commonly used scale, and you can see underneath the order of whole steps versus half steps. When comparing the major scale to the minor scale below, it is also 8 notes, but because it has a different order of steps, now it has a sadder or darker sound. On occasion, it may even have an Egyptian sound due to the fact that it has a large jump at the end. There is one more kind of scale that we can hear in music, and that is known as a chromatic scale. Notice that a chromatic scale is different from the previous two in that it is now 13 notes long, and that is because it uses every single note on the piano. It is often described as having a silly or circus-like sound, and all of the notes are a half step apart. I hope that you enjoyed this discussion on key. In our next lesson, we will learn about the idea of ostinatos.